Hello, everybody. We're just waiting for the last few people here to join, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here today. Just going to give it another minute. We've still got a few people in the waiting room.
Thank you for having us, Nadia.
Aw, so glad to see you. All right, so we're 2 minutes after the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. This event is being recorded, and the recording is going to be shared on the ALS TDI website afterward. Hi, everyone. My name is Nadia, if you don't know me, and I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Engagement for ALS TDI. Welcome today. This town hall series was created as a collaborative effort between ALS TDI, the Robert Packard Center Answer ALS Research Study, IMALS, and NEALS, the Northeast ALS Consortium, and these are the organizations that are presenting today. We know the world of ALS is overwhelming and difficult to navigate. There are so many organizations out there that play different and necessary roles within our community, and it's our hope to help you understand what these roles are. Our plan for this series is to invite various groups to share how they fit into the ALS landscape and what their focus is, whether it's advocacy and awareness, research, education, care and support, or a combination of these things. The combined efforts of each organization together play a critical role in advancing care and treatments for ALS. We all need care and support services to address medical needs. We need advocacy to create changes in policy that would fund science and expedite treatments. And we need cutting-edge research to fuel the treatment pipeline for the ALS community. So today we're going to have a brief presentation from each organization, followed by the chance for a Q&A. We're going to let each org finish their presentation before addressing questions. You can please go ahead and put your questions into the chat. And then if there's too many questions for the time allotted, we'll try to get those answers to you afterward. So our first presentation is from ALS TDI. ALS TDI is the drug discovery engine for ALS. And its multidisciplinary lab is focused solely on discovering and inventing drugs for ALS. Excuse me. It's the first and largest nonprofit biotech focused 100% on ALS research and incorporates all aspects of drug discovery under one roof to find treatments as quickly as possible. And with that, Carol, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Nadia. Hi, everybody. I am Carol Hamilton, the Vice President of Development at ALS TDI, the ALS Therapy Development Institute. I am the one waving my hand with the virtual background. Welcome. I am going to try to be brief. All of us presenters were speaking before everybody came on about how hard that is to be, because we're all enthusiastic about what we do, but I also want to make sure that all of these other wonderful programs get their time, so I'm not going to hog it. So there, next slide. At ALS TDI, our mission is simple. It's to discover and develop treatments for everyone with ALS as quickly as possible. We come at this with a level of urgency that is pretty amazing. We were founded by a family whose 29-year-old son, Stephen Haywood, was diagnosed with ALS. And from that family basement that you see on the left, we have grown into the most comprehensive drug discovery lab focused solely on ALS, nothing else. So we have come a long way. We are science driven, but most of the people here come into this world because of a family connection or a friend connection, much like the Haywood family who founded the Institute. We're the drug discovery engine for ALS. We will invent and discover treatments over and over and over again to fill the clinical pipeline until everyone in this community has a viable option to affect the prognosis of their disease. We will do this by discovering and inventing the treatments ourselves or partnering with other entities to help them move their drugs forward. We're a nonprofit biotech, so we can't make any money. And this is kind of a slide that is proof of concept that this approach as a nonprofit biotech works. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here because like what I said a couple of minutes ago, but what this shows you is that both a drug invented here, tegoprubart, which many of you hopefully saw last week, has moved on to successful findings in a phase 2 trial, and we look forward to where it's going next. Drugs like tegoprubart and AP101. Now, AP101 is with a company called Neuroimmune. We partnered to help that move that drug forward. So we've done it before. We have 2 programs that we intend to move forward into the clinic in the next few years. Recently, our CEO, CSO, Dr. Fernando Vieira, said out loud that his objective is to move a treatment forward every other year. So we are here to do that. On top of drug development and validation, we run the ALS Precision Medicine Program, PMP for short. Really here, we have developed the PMP to allow people with ALS a way to help us accelerate our understanding of this disease and leverage all of the data that people with ALS have inside them to help us identify subsets, drug populations, and biomarkers of ALS. There is a big what's in it for me for the 800 participants in the program, in that we share all of the data back with the program participants through a proprietary web portal so that they can track symptom progression and look at the impact of any change in protocol or interventions. So pretty cool program. We are that and a lot more, as they say. We're here to talk to you and help you through this journey. We are here to educate you along this journey. We're here to help you curate all of the information because we know it's overwhelming, although hopefully today will help with a lot of that. We run events. We are community funded. So help us when you can, but really we're here to help you. We're good partners, not only today, but on all of our science. These are just some of our partners that we will work with. Anybody who's a stakeholder with good rationale to bring drugs to people suffering with ALS, we're in. And that was really short. I hope I did it. And here's how you can reach me to answer any other questions or just to get in touch. How did I do, Nadia?
Thank you so much, Carol. That was wonderful. If anybody has questions, we would love to see them in chat. I have a few questions that were submitted in advance that I can ask in the meantime, because I'm not seeing any. Carol, could you speak to when we say that ALS is not incurable, but it's underfunded? What specifics can you add to that?
You know, there was a time, I've been in this world for 17 years, and there was a time that the science wasn't ready. The science is a lot readier to address this disease than it ever was. So underfunding matters. We certainly see federal funding efforts through Act for ALS. We don't know how much of that will be EAP versus research, but funding matters. Time, science, and funding. And one thing that the community can help with is making sure that this disease is funded well enough to get us to the place we want to go.
So, and then another question. So ALS TDI finds drugs, and then how does the partnership work with other companies for getting the drugs to trial?
Okay, so, you know, there may be a smaller biotech and, a startup or even some academic researchers who, let's say, are testing a compound in another neurodegenerative disease. And they say to themselves, there's reason to believe this could be potentially efficacious in ALS, but they don't have the funding nor the expertise nor the background to move that drug forward in ALS models. So they'll contact us and say, here's what we got. Would you partner with us? You guys have the expertise, especially in vivo models, to test this drug in your validation pipeline to see if there is reason to continue moving forward. We will do that, but that drug belongs to that company. So we partner with them. They will then move it forward under their own company's name, but we're happy to have helped as best we can along the way.
Okay, and then one additional question. Could you talk a little bit about the recent publication on the digital biomarkers that ALS TDI published?
Sure. If somebody else who's on the call here from ALS TDI could put a link to all of that in the chat so that we don't go too far into it. But we partnered with Google, who are, have the expertise in artificial intelligence, AI, and developed algorithms on how to look at our movement and speech data that was collected through the precision medicine program and determine how useful that data could be in setting up potentially new endpoints of disease in clinical trials and how it follows disease progression and mimics ALS-FRS-R. So please read more about it in the link that I think somebody just put in the chat, because it's an incredible outcome that we didn't even expect to intend when we established this program. But when you collect as much data as we do, you realize along the way that there's a richness and a robustness there that you can leverage to make a difference in all aspects of the disease.
Thank you so much, Carol. And I'm not seeing any additional questions right now. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next presenter, and that's Danielle Boyce. Dr. Danielle Boyce from Answer ALS Research Program and the Packard Center. Answer ALS is building and sharing a comprehensive clinical, genetic, molecular, and biochemical assessment of ALS, empowered by more than 1,000 people living with the disease. The Robert Packard Center for ALS Research at Johns Hopkins oversees this program. Thank you so much, Dr. Boyce, for being here.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. There we go. So about me, please call me Danielle. My academic background is in data science, epidemiology, and biostatistics. And my doctorate is in public administration, which is the science of bureaucracy, which comes in handy when you're running a large research program for sure. So I have lived experience though, which is equally important. And that is I'm Charlie's mom. My Charlie is 12 years old. He has a rare form of neurodegenerative epilepsy that is incurable, and we don't know the cause. So that may sound familiar to many people with ALS. And so I am his caregiver. And so that's how I got involved. First, I was a data scientist, but then I got involved in the rare disease in the neurology space as an advocate and scientific advisor. My other passions are data science, workforce development. How do we get people interested in using big data and data like Carol just shared and I'm going to share. And I love arts and museums. So I do a lot of pro bono data work with museums. So I want to just describe briefly the activities of the Packard Center, which you may or may not have heard of. You may have heard, more likely to have heard of the Answer ALS Research Program, and then share how you can get involved. So Packard Center is what we do is we are a basic research grant program. So we have about 30 projects at any given time that we fund to scientists around the world. So we raise funds for scientific projects and we give them away through an application and review process that I oversee. And Susie Connolly, who's on the call now, is managing our operations, and she supports that work as well. We have about 10 grantees per year. So they apply, scientists from around the world apply for Packard funding, and this equates to about $1 million. And then there's an annual symposium where they all meet and discuss some of their work, including unpublished data and monthly lab meetings. And these are a requirement of the grant program. We also have a Packard Scholars Program, which is a program to put people from underrepresented backgrounds who might otherwise have barriers as undergraduates and getting into neuroscience labs or studying neuroscience. So there's an application process and we fund them for the summer. We're going to expand this though, actually, and hopefully for a full school year in the future. So we currently have 6 students in 3 different labs around the country. And so we fund the whole project. We also have a new program that's near and dear to my heart as someone with lived experience, which is the Lived Experience Advisory Panel. And this panel advises us on all kinds of things related to basic research and the Answer ALS program. And then, of course, we have the Answer ALS data portal that I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail here. So here's a paper from Nature Neuroscience, which I'm happy to share the link to this. This is our paper announcing our data set, which is a large scale resource you can read here. And I can tell you a little bit what it does. Just like Carol, I found it difficult to boil this all down, but I'm going to try. So we have a data portal where you can slice and dice the data from our 1,000 plus, you can see at the bottom circled, our participants, and the data are currently analyzed. These participants were followed over the course of over a year, but not all the way, like not longitudinally as Carol described in the ALS TDI study, but there was a stop. And so the data went back to researchers who are now analyzing the omics data. And as those analytics are done, they come back to the portal and they're ingested in the portal, and then researchers can access all of the data through this portal. And so they select their cohort here, and then they tell us what they want, and through data use agreements, we give them the data for free. And so this is a slide that just sort of summarizes. We've had thousands of visitors and lots of data released to researchers, more than 200 projects started, a lot of data downloaded, cell lines, so iPSC lines created at Cedars-Sinai, and several publications all over the world. And you can see here our progress in the upper right toward completing the omics. So this is just something I wanted to share with you all as an example of what we're trying to do with Answer ALS. These are high school students who applied for access to our data set, and they did this study that was great. And we had them present at our annual meeting. It was amazing. So what we're really trying to do is make this an open science platform where anyone with a good idea, even if they're not already working in ALS, can come in and use the data. And so that's how we're trying to promote it. And it was really good what they did as high school. Again, really put me to shame. I felt like an underachiever, but it was terrific. So that's what we're trying to do here. So please join us. So we still have an app. So the study is closed, but we still have an app component. So you can see here the link to learn more about the app. And we'd love your feedback on what we've done so far. Share information about Answer ALS to collaborators in industry, nonprofit, and academia. So I know a lot of folks here come to a lot of meetings like this, and if it comes up, definitely share about all the organizations that you hear about here. And using our existing data, they can use the data that we have. They can add data to the portal if they're interested, and we can work with them on that using our tools. Sharing our best practices and lessons learned. I'm happy to do that. So help me to make those connections and advocate for similar features in other studies that you work with. So open consent forms allow for data sharing and simple data use agreements, use of data standards and common data elements, so that these data sets don't exist in silos. So they are shareable and you're comparing apples to apples. And online data dashboards like we have, and I'm really impressed with what ALS TDI has done with to give the data back to the participants is pretty cool. And these are just some of the collaborators on the Answer ALS program, and I could probably add a few more just in the last week. So it's pretty cool. And contact me anytime, you're never a bother. Always email me, feel free. I'd be happy to share any of this and talk to you some more. I'd love to talk to you about our lived experience advisory panel as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. We've got a couple of questions. Do you share your code and resources to be reused by other researchers?
Yeah, that's a great question. It comes up quite a bit. We were fortunate to have the funding, was donated to us for developing this beautiful portal. And so we don't want that to go to waste for other diseases, or even if someone wanted to do a larger ALS study or something longitudinal or something like that. So contact us if you know of anyone who would like that. And yes, that is donated as long as somebody, there's some stipulations, but you don't want to have somebody resell it. But otherwise, yes. All of that is available to other researchers, and we're collaborating not just on the data, but how we did it.
Thank you so much. We have a few other questions coming in. Is the data cross-sectional, not longitudinal? And do you follow biomarkers?
Yeah, so the data are longitudinal. So we collected data at several time points throughout 1 year, and many people had blood samples taken, over time, and a couple CS and some CSF over time, but not longitudinal in the sense that it was open-ended. The end date wasn't open; it was closed. And then we followed up with phone, video chat type visits in the year following the initial year of blood samples. So there aren't 2 years of blood sample collection. The question was on biomarkers. So yeah, so the blood resides in the samples reside at MGH in a biorepository. And so researchers can apply to access those and do biomarkers and such. There's nothing been published on the Answer ALS samples, but yes, that's exactly right. And so and someone else asked a question about the how long you had the slower versus longer progression. So that could be analyzed, right? Because we collect the clinical data about disease onset, symptom onset, and so on. So we would be able to analyze that as well. I should clarify that the portal has only been up and running for about a year now. So it's a relatively recent study. So we haven't had a lot of published results yet.
Okay, and then we have another question on, are you still collecting data today if more people with ALS want to put their data in? And so maybe you could go into the difference between the 1,000-person data that was collected before and whether there's ongoing data collection now.
So we get this question asked a lot. So our budget was for the 1,000 plus the control that we have now. We are totally open to finding the funding to, increasing that, obviously, or sharing our lessons and our code and such with other groups who might want to do it too, do it instead of us. We are doing ongoing collection, but that is only for the app. That would not include the people who are already in the study.
Okay, and then I think there was a question about the iPSC lines specifically. Do you have iPSCs from slow progressors versus faster progressors?
Yes, yes, we do. And they haven't been, we haven't finished all of them, but there's about 800. That was on the one slide that I showed a few slides back. Yes, and so we have the reason why this is powerful, say the scientists I work with, is that we have the iPSCs, we have the blood samples, we have the CSF, but we also have the clinical data that describes these participants in such detail. So we can differentiate between and stratify the different types of ALS and progression and genetics and all of those things.
Okay, and then I think last question here, has NIH asked to look at HERV-K in your blood samples? So whether there's a specific, is anyone analyzing specific mutations? And I think NIH, they're asking about HERV-K because there's an ongoing study for.
So I could get back to you and see if Dr. Rothstein has any involvement with that in particular. But we have genomics analysis on, the data. We have we're in the process of doing the omics on all the iPSCs. So that will be a question that will be answerable probably within a year, I would say, when all those analyses are done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to move on to IMALS here. We've got Kathleen Rooney, Kathleen Rooney from IMALS. IMALS is a community-led nonprofit that provides critical support and resources for those living with and impacted by ALS, improves the clinical trial and research landscape through policy change and direct engagement with stakeholders, and mobilizes the community to increase ALS awareness. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks, Nadia. So as she said, I am ALS. She just read through what our mission statement is. That gives a great overview about what we do. A little bit of background, it was started in 2019 by Brian Wallach and Sandra Abravaya. Brian was diagnosed in 2017, and they took a look and said, how can we be most impactful in this space, knowing that there are already many ALS organizations out there who are already doing incredible work. So how can we add something new that's going to be impactful. So through that, we provide critical support and resources to people impacted by ALS and empower advocates to raise awareness and lead the movement against ALS to overall get to treatments and cures as quickly as possible. So the way that we do that, mobilizing people impacted by ALS that I'll walk through, it's really powered by a lot of our incredible community teams. Transforming public understanding. We know that once more people know about ALS, the closer we will get to curing it. And then delivering for people impacted by ALS. The third aspect of that is innovating research systems that I'll talk through how we do that, and then transforming lives and getting to cures as quickly as we can. So starting with our community support team, there are a couple programs that I will walk through. This is how we aim to show up for people impacted by ALS, whether you're living with ALS or a caregiver, a family member, or someone who's lost someone to ALS. And a really big piece of that is our ALS support team. So it's staffed by ALS support specialists who are social workers, speech language pathologists, and are there to connect with you one-on-one, listen to what specifically the challenges you're facing in ALS, and then help to collect and resources and share those with you, and then to help guide you through as you are impacted by ALS. We also have our peer support initiative. So this works to connect people who are impacted by ALS with each other and have unique one-on-one support. We try our best to match people who have like experiences in ALS. So if you have a parent that's going through ALS, we try and connect you with another child of a parent who's been impacted by ALS, so that you can talk with someone who's been in your shoes and can help be there for you. Another program within our community support program is the support groups. We have grown these over time and have started with those impacted by ALS, but have grown those to have a caregiver group, one of people who are just living with ALS, and plan to expand those even further based on what the needs we hear from you all of what you're looking for in a support group. We also have an online resource center. So like I said, when we stood out as an organization, we knew that there was incredible things happening already across the community, and we did not want to duplicate efforts. All we were trying to do is centralize that information for you all, knowing that it can be really overwhelming when you're diagnosed and you're out looking for information. So we wanted to centralize that in one place, and that is our online resource center. So that has categorized information that you can go and browse at your own pace. It has an area that you can search ALS resources by location, by the type of support. And then it has some articles that help and resources that help. If you're not really knowing where to start, you can start here. And there's an FAQ section that was led and written by people impacted by ALS. And then the Ask Me Anything panel. So this has been driven by the community and led by people who are living with ALS in different areas. We did one on a tracheostomy and are just a place for you to come and ask any questions that have been on your mind. And this is our incredible support team. On the communications and organizing side, so that's on transforming awareness, public understanding of ALS, and it's also to help mobilize people so that we can get a lot of stuff done. On the raising awareness side, we will do crazy things like take over Times Square and help raise awareness, and then getting some national media so that overall we can bring more people into this movement and make change quicker. That also is our action center. So if you're looking for ways to get your community involved, like we know as you get diagnosed, there's a lot of people who are like, what can we do? How can we help? How can we help? Like send them here. There is you only have 5 minutes in your day. Here, take this action. You want to get more involved? Here, we have a whole team that can support you in getting involved in Veterans Affairs. So that's our action center. We also use social media and our newsletter as two tools that help to provide you with information and resources, and also help to identify really strategic actions we all can take to help move the movement forward. And then we also host events as part of our organizing efforts. And like I said, we have the community team. So they are 6 teams. We started as 3. We have now grown to 6 based on people coming to us and saying, hey, there is an area here that we all can work together and make it better. So that has turned into the different teams across veterans, community outreach, which focuses on awareness, legislative affairs, the Many Shades of ALS team, clinical trials, familial ALS, and the Thank You Squad. And then this is our communications and organizing team. And the last aspect of what we do, Carol had mentioned Act for ALS. A lot of what we do in research and policy is aiming to transform the ALS research system. So a lot of that is on the policy-driven side and increasing the funding that is made available for ALS research. So Act for ALS is one kind of practical example of how we do that, of helping to push forward policy that makes more funding available for research, and then also helps to guide where that funding is being spent. So we don't know yet, but working to get 75% of that funding going to expanded access programs that are putting drugs in bodies as quick as possible. Thank you. So I'll put in the chat as well, but if you are looking for support, please reach out to our community support team, and then organizing community@imals.org, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. So thanks. Sorry if that was a little bit over 7 minutes.
Thank you, Kathleen. That was fantastic. We have a question asking, do you have a PLS support group? So PLS is it's a motor neuron disease. Is there anything specific at IMALS?
I don't think so yet. I think that, but please reach out to our community support team, or I'll put reach out to me and I can follow up just to make sure, but not yet.
Okay. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Thank you so much for sharing your email, Kathleen. I think we may still have some time for additional questions at the end, so please feel free to continue to put your questions in chat, everybody. And in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and move forward with our next presenter then. We have Allison, who is going to be talking about the NEALS Peace Committee. The mission of the Northeast ALS Consortium is to rapidly translate scientific advances into clinical research and new treatments for people with ALS and motor neuron disease. The Peace Committee is the community-facing arm of the NEALS Consortium with the goal to connect the ALS community with advocacy and educational opportunities. And PEACE stands for Patient Education and Advocacy Committee. Thank you so much for being here, Allison.
Thanks for having me. This is so exciting, and what a great group of people that I get to be on with. I'm just so excited. Thank you for putting this together, Nadia. And I'm really excited to talk about NEALS because, as you can see, I wear a lot of different hats in that organization. I'm a certified research ambassador, and I'll share a little bit about that. I co-chair with Nadia the Patient Education and Advocacy Committee. We'll talk a little about that. I'm also on the Retention, Recruitment, and Experience Committee and the Education Committee. I'm faculty on our Clinical Research Learning Institute, which I'll share a little bit about. And just last year, joined the executive leadership team as a patient liaison. So I love NEALS. Get my computer just a second to catch up here. Okay, so I want to tell you just really briefly a little bit about me so you know what you're up against. I'm very competitive. I know that's not a good thing. I'm not bragging. I am, just so you kind of know. Education is super important to me. I'm a lifelong learner. I learn something new every day. So I have all of this useless information in my mind, I think, because I just want to know everything. I prefer to eat healthy, except for if I'm with somebody who suggests something else, like literally anything else. I'm like, I'm in, especially if it's a donut. I love to meet new people because I think people are good, and I am a total type A personality. And if you don't know what a type A++ personality is, it's like I make lists. Like I put on my list that I should make a list about something, and then I panic because I have a list of things to do and I can't stand to have things to do on a list. So that's what a type A++ personality is. And that's me. But of all these things that I am, and I can joke about all these things, the most serious and the most deep and most important thing that I am is I'm a survivor of ALS. And you can look at this beautiful picture. This is my husband of 20 years, my soulmate. who we started our journey together on March 31st, 2015, our ALS journey when we got his diagnosis. And his journey ended on April 14th, 2016, 380 days later. But for me, it's something that I'm going to live with until the second half of my dash is known, right? So it's a part of me forever. And that's why I stay in this community. But because I believe right now, there really is hope. There's so much happening. And this is going to be the time that we redefine what it means to be a survivor of ALS, because like right now, that's a really tough gig. It's kind of a tough place to be. So how did I get to Niels? Well, for everybody on this call that has ever had to hear those words, you have ALS, you know that time stops right there, right? And you look back and you can't see anything behind you. Your past doesn't even matter. And when you look forward, you're like, you're not sure, and it's scary, and you don't know. And for me, that led me to Niels because I wanted answers. I wanted to know how we were going to fix this. So a little bit about Niels. The mission of Niels is to translate scientific advances into clinical research into treatments. And I think that's really, really, really important to know as we talk about meteor.orgs and different things. I think I have seen lately or previously where people are saying, well, why isn't Niels making a statement on this? Or why isn't Niels putting out a position paper on this? And the reason is Niels is a consortium of members. So Niels itself is really a shell. It's a shell where people can have memberships and they join, and these members have to meet certain scientific and research criteria. So Niels itself isn't an entity that its charter or its membership agreements allow it to make an advocacy statement. Niels cannot say this is good or this is bad. However, Niels members are very respected in the community, and Niels members can do those type of things. And so I think you probably all know many of those Niels members that you see on webinars and you see making statements all the time. They are part of Niels, but Niels itself is an education and research entity. So Niels has a ton of subcommittees. Like others, they grow as needed. They're very scientific, very specific to what the community needs as far as research. We do have a scientific advisory board where people can come in and say, look, I'm looking at doing a research trial and I'm really interested to know if this is a good protocol or how to start setting it up or how to work with the FDA. And the scientific advisory board will help people through that process. Everything, just like EAP, if you're not sure, if you're doing an EAP as a physician for the first time, Niels will help you walk through that. As well as they do have an extensive repository of data and biosamples. So if education is Niels' way of communicating, how does that play into the patient and family world of this? And that happens under what we call the Clinical Research Learning Institute, which to me always sounds like a Harry Potter thing. Like you get on the bus and the bus takes you to this place and you learn this magical information. And that's like, it's sort of true, but not completely true. It's just another umbrella. It's another shell that covers the things like you see when there are webinars, and you see Niels' webinar and Merit Sakovic and Jeremy Scheffner will talk about this. That comes through the Clinical Research Learning Institute, as well as our Research Ambassador certification program, which I'll share in just a moment. We have a research paper review team, and we do a ton of community projects under the umbrella of the CRLI, or the Clinical Research Learning Institute. So Research Ambassador training programs. I know you're like, oh my gosh, what is that, Allison? That sounds so cool. And it is cool. It's a 2-day program for people with ALS and their families or their caregivers or surviving spouses who really want to be advocates within the community, but really want to focus on research and making sure good information about research is disseminated. So we have a lot of our Niels members who you may know or see on these webinars that come together, and we have a 2-day training. And at the end of completing this training, you are a certified ALS research ambassador through Niels. Previously, when I became a research ambassador, we did this every October in Florida. That's like kind of hard for some people to get to. I'm on the West Coast, so it's a little bit of a jaunt to do that. But the silver lining of COVID is we figured out how to do these things virtually, like really successfully do these virtually. And so last year we were able to do 4. And in fact, we even did one in Canada. So we were able to go international. And this year, really excited to be in person again, November 3rd and 4th in Florida. But we just finished a virtual class, and we have communications ongoing with doing a class in Hawaii, hopefully in person, in Greece, in Australia. We're really working to get the program out, to have as many research ambassadors as possible. And the reason is that every time we do one class in person, we get far more people interested than we can actually have come together. So we want to make sure everybody can jump into the program in some way if they like. If you're interested in the upcoming class in Florida, I do have the link in the presentation there for you. You can go to neils.org. So why be a research ambassador? Because you can be involved in all kinds of things in the community without going through that. But what's different about being a research ambassador is the projects that you have access to being part of come through NEOS. They are the scientific research consortium and educators. People come to them for information, and when they come in, then they're told, well, here's where we would put patient advocates in. Why don't you speak with our research ambassadors? And as long as you have that research ambassador certification, you can represent NEOS and be the patient advocates in all types of special projects and research. And we do a lot of patient advisory boards. We do a lot of special projects. And we do that because we believe that we're more than our diagnosis. We're much more than those 3 letters ALS. We have perspective, but we have skills, we have mad skills, and we can bring them into places and combine that with our perspective and make something really, really valuable out of that. So in having said that, for any of you on the call, and I know some of you know that we have no conflict of interest, okay? So we as research ambassadors, we don't belong to any one place, and we support anything that gets us to a cure. We don't care where we get it or how we get it, we just want it, right? So we work with everybody else on this call, with ALS TDI, with the Packard Center, with Answer ALS. You can be a part of as many different things as you want to be. You don't need to feel like you have to do anything or you can't do anything. So how do we connect people who are research ambassadors with all of those projects? We do it through this PEACE committee that you hear about, the Patient Education and Advocacy Committee. So now back up a second and make sure that we all understand where that falls in. NEOS is a consortium of scientists, mad scientists sometimes, consortium of scientists, and the area in which we can advocate and can make statements and can say how we feel is through the PEACE committee. And so our mission in the PEACE committee is to empower ALS families by giving them the information, the resources, and the opportunities that they need in order to do so. And at these PEACE committee meetings, for some of you I know have been to them, we don't make people register. We don't, make a big deal about it. We're going to hold these meetings every month, whether we have 5 people attend or 500 people attend. And the reason is we just want to bring the community together. So we'll have research ambassadors, we'll have researchers and clinicians, we'll have pharma, we'll have other ALS organizations. If you've been on the PEACE committee meetings for any amount of time, you've probably seen all of these other presenters present at our PEACE committee meetings because we are all part of one organization. But if we haven't gotten your organization to present, or there's something that you want to know, or you kind of want to be involved in something, you're of course welcome to reach out to any of us at any time. So you're probably sitting there thinking, okay, this is so cool, all these places that I can get involved. How do I get involved? Who do I pick? Who do I reach out to first? You have all of our email addresses, and I just want to let you know that we all talk all the time, and we will help you get to the right place. So if you were to come to me and say, you know what, I'm really, really interested in legislation, and I really am interested in Veterans Affairs, I have a military family, I would say, you know what, you should connect with Kathleen at IMALS. So we are all going to help you get to whatever spot you're interested in doing. And for you to find that spot, what I would say is that you remember that we're more than just patients and caregivers. We're people, we have skills to bring to the table, and we have different perspectives. So play to your strength and create whatever opportunities that you would like to see. So thank you for having me. Nadia, thank you for organizing this, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Allison. I'm trying to see, I'm not actually seeing a lot of questions directed towards the Peace Committee specifically. So would the November Curly training be the next opportunity for people to get involved?
Yes, for the research ambassador class, the next open session would be the one that's being held in Florida in person in November.
Perfect. And do we know when applications are going to go out for that?
By we, if you mean me, no. No, I'm not really exactly sure, but I do know that it usually happens at the end of June, beginning of July. And it's a super simple application process. You literally sign into the website and answer one question: why do you want to be a research ambassador? And that gets submitted, and the faculty will all come together, and we have this whole process of voting and getting people into the classes, and people who we can't get into a class finding another class for. And what that also gives you is access to people like Dr. Sokovich and Dr. Scheffner and Dr. Macklin, the statistician. Once you have become part of this network, you have access to those people as a resource forever going forward. So that's also another really cool part.
Perfect. And then we have a really nice comment from Gwen Peterson, who is one of our research ambassadors, who's saying Curly and subsequent Peace Committee meetings encourage engagement and collaboration with pharma researchers, other research ambassadors, et cetera. Thank you, Gwen. That's exactly what we do. And then we also have a question about the November Curly and if it will just be in person or if there's a remote option as well.
The Curly class itself will be in person, and will feature a new panel with research ambassador mentors. So the class itself will be in person. However, it follows the NEALS annual science conference, and the conference will have a virtual option, and all research ambassadors and community members are able to sign up, I believe, at no charge, but I shouldn't say that because this is being recorded and I'm not exactly sure, but I do believe it's completely free of charge to watch the virtual science sessions.
Okay, and then we have a question about how much does it cost and what are the requirements of the research ambassadors?
Great question. It doesn't cost. Especially if you're doing it virtually. If you're coming to Florida, NEALS covers your expenses to come and attend the class. So your expenses will all be covered. So there's no cost to that. The requirements are just, you have to be touched by ALS. You have to want to be a strong communicator in the community, in your own community, in the national community, in the global community. It's a very personal choice. We don't have like tests or requirements. You have to do X number of things. It is totally up to you. It's more of an opportunity than something that you have to sign up and pay for.
And then we have a question about, can you give us some examples of what research ambassadors do in their local area? So what do they bring back to their communities?
Sure. So happy to do that. And I know that there are some research ambassadors on the call if anybody wants to jump in. But I know we all have local chapters. We all have local situations that are just a little different geographically or demographically, weather-wise, different things. So our research ambassadors are all over the country and now in other countries as well. And they really bring back research information and current information from the research consortium or pharma or any of our organizational partners to their local support groups, to their local chapters of the MDA or the ALS Association, whatever they might believe in. You know, they can bring it back to their church. They can bring it to their kids' school, wherever this information wants to be disseminated on social media, virtually. I know if I'm allowed to call you out, I'm so proud Lane is on this call and he's a research ambassador and is now the patient advisor to the NIH for their full strategy. So like you can make it as big or as small as you want it to be.
Thank you so much, Allison. And then I'm seeing a lot of questions that are talking about collaborative efforts from all of these organizations. I think these are going to be aimed kind of at most of our presenters. somebody is asking, with all of these organizations getting research samples from people living with ALS, are they sharing the data or are they all staying separate? And then by combining the info, wouldn't it provide 3 times the data to each org? So Dr. Boyce, you are probably a great one to address some of this. And then Carol, maybe you can speak to the PMP a little bit as well.
Sure. So the idea behind the Answer ALS research program and the portal that I came on to start managing in February was just what you described, is to share these data openly and also to ingest data from other studies who might want to use those cool visualization tools that I showed you for their data. They won't all have the same participants in them, right? Because they're different parts of the country, maybe different time points. But if they do, there are ways also to align them with if the consent form allows for that. And so that's where I said at the end that something to advocate for is for participants to be consented in studies that allow for sharing like we want to do. Because if they were not allowed to, and when the study was approved by the institution, then we are not allowed to share them, and put them together. But you're right, that's the goal behind this. And we're highly collaborative, working with other organizations and even taking our data and sharing it onto other portals as our institution allows and as our consent allows, so that we can use their tools on our data and maximize what can be done. But that's very important. Oh, and one more thing I wanted to add is data standards. Something that I work in a lot is how to make sure we're all asking questions the same way. So it's apples to apples and not apples to oranges. So we're asking things like race. Think of all the different ways you might ask the race or gender, let alone disease or symptoms and things like that. So one of the things that we can all advocate for is common data elements. And there's a number of people on this call who are working in that space. And that's where my data science background comes in. It's really important that we all work together so that even if we have separate initiatives, for whatever reason, we're able to compare our results and smush them together, just like you mentioned, where we're allowed, so that they're, like you said, 3 times the knowledge, instead of just keeping all these things separate. Carol?
Well, I think that Danielle said it well and has far more of a background in this than I, but it is the goal. It's harder than everybody thinks. So using her example about gender, if Answer ALS asks the question, are you male? And if the ALS TDI Precision Medicine Program asks, what gender are you? How do we combine that information? The data is different. She's also right in that we're not the only players in this. The people who are providing the data and the information have to make the decision on how it can be used as well. That said, there are some things we can do along the way. So the partnership that the ALS Precision Medicine Program did with Google, those algorithms are out there for the public and for the researchers in the ALS space to use. And we've already had some biotechs and pharmas giddy with excitement to be able to get their hands on those. So we're doing it where we can. We're all starting to learn about how to ask the questions, as Danielle said, in the same way. But I don't want anybody to feel like replication and repetition in science is necessarily always bad. There is participate in these programs. Redundancy is a good thing. We're all still learning. It is okay for the ALS Precision Medicine Program and Answer ALS and everything that I Am ALS does and everything that Niels does. There is room for this all at the table, and we are learning from one another along the way. So don't feel like we're in a stand and wait situation. We're running with it at the same time.
That's a good way to put it, Carol. We're also highly collaborative. We all work together and talk to one another, share research with one another too. So, and the digital biomarkers is a perfect example of this, because it's such a new area that we're not quite sure exactly what the best approach is. So, making sure that we're consented to share, like Carol was saying, those algorithms and things like that, while having our own programs is sometimes not the worst thing that could happen. But I totally appreciate the concerns. My Charlie's data is in 30 different places all over the country. And to my knowledge, none of those groups are talking to one another. So that is disheartening as someone who loves someone with a rare disease. So I totally appreciate that. And we are working to create this framework to help to maximize the opportunities where they make sense.
I think I will add, having talked with so many organizations in the last year, everybody is open to making this happen. So while it might not be seamless and flawless right now, everyone I have talked to, they are actually communicating behind the scenes and trying to figure out ways of making this happen on a larger scale. I know for the precision medicine program, I got a question about whether it's designed for sharing. It is, and where we are able to contribute data to another researcher, ALS TDI is definitely trying to do that. And I know Dr. Boyce is trying to do that as well. So we are all keenly aware of the sharing issue, and that we do need multiple studies. One other question, we're almost on time. I think this is kind of directed at everybody. This is a great question. How do all of these groups foresee working collaboratively with other organizations to create a bigger impact for families affected by ALS in the long run? And then there was also a question about other organizations from Lane. And yes, Lane, we would love to bring all of those organizations on in the future. And the whole goal of this is that we all understand what each org does and to continue to work together. So back to our question on how do we all foresee working collaboratively together to help people with ALS?
Who do you want to answer?
Maybe Kathleen can start, since we've been talking so much about research.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can start, but then everyone please jump in and add. I think the first thing that comes to mind, I mean, a lot of what we are talking about now and what I've seen, I've only been in this space 3 years, but I think what I've seen over the years is that a lot of putting the person who is impacted by ALS first and then driving you to the resources that you need. So there are incredible organizations across, and ALS is not going to be everything for you, and we don't need to be, and we can drive you to the places that you need. And I think that that is the best way. And I think that I definitely have seen that happen again and again in this community. And I think that that is the best way that we can show up. And then I think on the side of getting to, I mean, we are trying to get to treatments as cures as quickly as possible, and turning this into a chronic illness. And the way that we do that is we all work collaboratively, and we come to the table and we understand, like what we were just discussing with research, like where are their challenges, where are their issues, and then how can we all work together. And I know that that is kind of like pie in the sky. Like I'm not just trying to ramble on that. I think that there are some instances, particularly with policy efforts, where there are particular relationships on the Hill that are really critical to moving forward a particular piece of policy. And if we can maximize those relationships across the entire community, we're overall going to be able to drive this forward quicker, and we are going to be able to make a better impact. So I think that it's specific to the moment, but it's just being open for and hearing from all of you of what are those times that we can come together, and how can we come together.
Perfect. And we're kind of up on time, but I'm seeing one other question here about whether an entity at NIH can step forward as a coordinating entity. And I think that's such a great question, because there's so many people on this call that are involved with the NIH efforts around ALS right now. So even Lane, I would love to hear from you, and Dr. Boyce. And I mean, like so many people on this call are actively working with NIH to make things happen. So I don't know, Lane, would you like to say a couple of words?
All I'll say is they're trying. They're very aware of it. We talk about it in all the working group meetings. We had a meeting this morning. We were talking about it then. They're trying. They're sensitive to the situation, and I'm optimistic. I am.
I agree with that. Every interaction that I have with NIH, which is frequent, they are aware of and want to learn more and want to learn more from the perspective of the person living with ALS or their caregiver. I'm hopeful from what I've heard over the last year or so, and with everything going on with the strategic planning process and having so many people living with ALS on those committees and caregivers and representatives from advocacy and as well as science. I'm feeling good about our relationship between the community and NIH. They're hearing us.
Yeah, I actually sit on the strategy team working group for the collaboration strategy. And members of all the big organizations sit on that same team, and we're all working towards the same goal, the FDA, everybody. So it's definitely an initiative on the forefront.
And this is Gwen. Sorry for
Gwen.
chiming in. I really, truly think the NIH sees how articulate, smart, informed, educated, all of those words the ALS community is. I think they are really starting to trust us and wanting to work alongside us. And that has really started and come from the community's efforts. So I see a shift.
Thank you so much, Gwen. It's so great to hear from you. All right, well, we're up on time. So thank you so much for being here. If you guys have any questions, I put my email in the chat too. We're all here for you. Would love to hear from you. And take care all. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Great
Bye.
to see so many people.
Thank you.